Immediate 28 na legislature ng Guam is called to order. And we ask for Senator Sean Gumatato to lead us in the prayer, to be followed by Senator Chris Barnett to lead us in the national anthem, Senator Shelley Cabo to lead us with the Guam hymn, and Senator Sabrina Salas Matanani with the recitation of the interface. Please rise.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for the gifts of life. Thank you for this opportunity to do the work of not just your people, Lord, but for you. During this time of the Lenten season, we are reminded of all that has been done by your Son for us. I ask, Lord, that you look down on the proceedings, look down on the senators, look down on our collective staffs, but importantly, Lord, look down on the people of Guam, that the policies that are created here that would affect them in the positive. Lord, thank you for all that you do. In your name we pray. Amen.
To express the never-ending and never-forgotten gratitude by the people of Guam, the legislature recognized recipients of Imiladan Mas Takulo na Sakripisyo on a display in the Guam Congress Building and during each of its sessions. For the recognition of a recipient of the Imiladan Mas Takulo na Sakripisyo, Vice Speaker Tony Yara, you are recognized.
On behalf of the grateful island and country, we honor Spec 4 David Cruz Flores and the family of Spec 4 David Cruz Flores, for making the ultimate sacrifice in service and defense of our island and country.
Thank you. Be seated. Madam Clerk, please take roll call.
Vice Speaker Atta. Senator Barnett. Speaker Blas.
Here.
Senator Borja. Senator Calvo. Senator Duenas. Senator Gumatautau. Senator Lujan. Senator Munya Barnes. Senator Parkinson. Senator Perez. Senator Salas Matanani. Senator San Augustine. Senator Taidagui. Senator Terlahi. Mr. Speaker, there is a quorum.
Thank you. Majority Leader Senator Lujan, you are recognized.
Thank you, and good morning, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move to approve the legislative journals dated January 26, 2026 and February 11, 2026, subject to corrections.
On the motion to approve legislative journals dated January 26, 2026 and February 11, 2026, are there any objections? Hearing and seeing no objection, motion carries. Majority Leader Senator Lujan, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there are communications and petitions, and I move that they be appended into today's session journal.
On the motion that communications and petitions be appended to today's session journal, are there any objections? Hearing and seeing no objections, motion carries. Majority Leader Senator Lujan, you are recognized.
Mr. Speaker, there are messages from the Imagahagan Guahan, and I move that they be appended into today's session journal.
On the motion that messages from Imagahagan Guahan be appended to today's session journal, are there any objections? Hearing and seeing no objection, motion carries. Majority Leader Senator Lujan, you are recognized.
Mr. Speaker, there are reports and standing committees, and I move that they be appended into today's session journal.
On the motion that reports of standing committees be appended to today's session journal, are there any objections? Seeing and hearing no objection, motion carries. Majority Leader Senator Lujan, you're still recognized.
Mr. Speaker, there are no reports of select committees.
Thank you. You can proceed.
Mr. Speaker, I move that introduce bill numbers 225-38 CRR through 261-38 CRR, 262-38 LS, and 263-38 LS, and 264-38 COR through 286-38 CRR, and resolutions introduced, resolutions number 137-38 CRR, and 138-38 CRR, 139-38 LS, and 140-38 LS, and 141-38 CR through 150-38 CR be deemed to have been given its first reading.
On the motion, are there any objections? Hearing and seeing no objections, motion carries. We are in motion. Senator Lujan, Majority Leader, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move to excuse senators not present for today's legislative session.
On the motion, are there any objections? Hearing and seeing no objection, motion carries. Majority Leader Lujan, you are still recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I move that all congratulatory, commendatory, and condolence resolutions introduced today and for the remainder of this legislative session be considered first read and adopted to allow the Legislative Council to make technical corrections and to add all senators as co-sponsors.
Okay. On the motion, are there any objections? Hearing and seeing no objection, motion carries. Majority Leader Senator Lujan, you're still recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I move to reorder the second reading file items bills number 231, 262, 205, and 225 be moved to the bottom of the second reading file.
Can you repeat the
Bills,
it again?
bills number 231, 262, 205, and 225.
Okay.
20.
On the motion to reorder the order, to move bills 231-38, 262-38, 205-38, and 225-38 to the bottom of the second reading. Let's take a 1-minute recess.
Mr. Speaker, there is a correction rather than...
Back in session. Go ahead, sir.
Mr. Speaker, I'm sorry, there's a correction. It was not 225, it's 228.
Okay. On the motion to move bills 231, 262, 205, and 228 to the bottom of the second reading file for the purposes of they require committee of the whole. And so we want to move them to the bottom so that we can take care of them all together. Are there any objections? Hearing and seeing no objection, motion carries. Are there any other motions? Any other motions? We're going to do that now. We're going to do that now. Okay? No other motions? Proceed to legislative concurrence. Senator Salas Matanani, you are recognized. Concurrence. Annie Burdari.
The Committee on Health would like to move the nomination of Annie Burdalio to serve as the member of the Guam Board of Medical Examiners with recommendations to confirm to the third reading file.
On the motion, are there any objections? Hearing and seeing no objection, motion carries. Senator Salas Matanani, you still recognized.
The Committee on Health and Veterans Affairs reports out the nomination of Dr. Ricardo Eusebio to serve as a member of the Guam Board of Medical Examiners with the recommendation to confirm and move it to the third reading file.
On the motion, are there any objections? Hearing and seeing no objection, motion carries. Senator Taitigui, now you are recognized.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker, and good morning to my colleagues. And of course, those who are listening this morning, buenas and hafaday. Mr. Speaker, I move to place to the voting file from the Committee on Economic Investment, Military Buildup, Regional Relations, Technology, Regulatory Affairs, Justice, Election, and Retirement the nomination of Jane T. Flores to serve as a member of the Criminal Justice Compensation Commission with a recommendation to do confirm.
Is that criminal justice or criminal injuries?
Say again, Mr. Speaker.
Is it criminal justice or criminal injuries?
It's the Criminal Injuries Compensation Commission.
Okay.
Yeah.
On the motion, are there any objections? Hearing and seeing no objection, motion carries. Senator Dueñas, sir, you're recognized.
Sidus Masi, Mr. Speaker, and good morning, colleagues, and to the people of Guam. I move to place in the voting file from the Committee on Finance and Government Operations the nomination of Genevieve P. Rapadas to serve as a member of the Guam Ethics Commission Board of Commissioners with the recommendation to do confirm.
On the motion, are there any objections? Hearing and seeing no objection, motion carries. Senator Salas Matanani, you're recognized again.
The Committee on Health and Veterans Affairs would like to move the nomination of Dr. Jeffrey Galgo to serve as a member of the Guam Board of Medical Examiners with the recommendation to do confirm to the third reading file.
On the motion, are there any objections? Hearing and seeing no objection, motion carries. Okay, we are now on the second reading file. All right. First bill is Bill number 131-38 COR. Vice Speaker Tony Addison, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move to place Bill 131-38 COR, an act to authorize the Chamorro Trust to sell a portion of Lot 5174-REM-1, Municipality of Tamuning, consisting of an area of 1,485 plus or minus square feet, and to deposit the proceeds of the sale into the Chamorro Land Trust Infrastructure and Survey Fund. To the third reading, I'd like to speak on this motion, please.
You can proceed, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this bill authorizes the sale of a Chamorro Land Trust lot to the adjoining homeowner. This lot runs along the backyard of the homeowner's lot and consists of about 138 square meters. On this small sliver of land sits a fence that adjacent landowner was required to construct by the Department of Public Works as a condition for the occupancy following substantial renovations to the home. On January 17th of 2019, the CLTC adopted a resolution recommending that a lot be sold to the homeowners. And the resolution was was transmitted to then Speaker Tina Rose Munoz Barnes to ask for approval of the land sale. Now, this lot, Mr. Speaker, has no practical or useful value to CLTC as it sits between the adjacent landowner and a 200-foot drop cliff. So it's too small to erect a building, and it's unsuitable for farming. It can't be used for utilities, roads, or government purposes. And again, like I said, from the property owner, it's a 200-foot drop. So there's absolutely no use for it. We got to just do what we can to ensure that there's safety and compliance with the homeowner by erecting that fence, keeping their occupants and everyone else safe. The proceeds of the sale would be deposited into the Chamorro Land Trust Infrastructure and Survey Fund. And additionally, the value of the property will increase and more real property revenues will be generated by our government. And I ask my colleagues for their support on this measure. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. On the bill, 131-38 COR, are there any senators wishing to speak on the bill? On the bill. Gentleman from Telephone, sir, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to share brief remarks regarding Bill 131. There's been debate in recent sessions criticizing what the Chamorro Land Trust Act should and should not be. Here is a reminder of what goes into the Trust Infrastructure and Survey Fund to support the work of the CLTC. I see no issue with placement into the fund for issues that led up to this particular proposal. According to the minutes of the CLTC's February 19, 2019 regular meeting, the CLTC voted unanimously to sell portions of Lot 5174-REM-1 to contiguous landowners up to the edge of the cliff line in the village. Less than a month later, on March 17, 2019, the CLTC adopted resolution number 2019-05, which approved a request from Nicole Kelly to purchase a portion of Lot 5174-REM-1 Tamuning. The CLTC recognized that access to the subject lot is extremely difficult, as the author mentioned, due to its terrain and the small property really has limited use. Mr. Speaker, the CLTC chairwoman at the time stated that her agency was aware that there was an encroachment and that Mrs. Kelly's case came up because she wasn't able to get an occupancy permit. However, Mrs. Kelly's neighbors were able to get an occupancy permit despite encountering the same encroachment issues. Mr. Speaker, in response to the CLTC chairwoman's question regarding her agency's roles or rights in situations where encroachments on CLTC property were identified, then Assistant Attorney General Jessica Toft commented at the time that if the surrounding neighbors attempt to sell their homes to another person and the new owners decide to remodel, they would probably run into the same issue as Mrs. Kelly. The Assistant AG at the time advised that the CLTC could issue a cease and desist order and require alleged violators to take down the encroachment portions or buy the CLTC land. Nearly 7 years later, Bill 131 is the only policy that I am aware of that attempts to carry out the AG's advice on this particular matter. Mr. Speaker, I appreciate the Vice Speaker's efforts with Bill 131 and remain concerned about other property owners who might be facing a similar situation. Unfortunately, what the experiences of the Kelly family tell us is that a longer list of property owners might, through no fault of their own, be encroaching on CLTC properties. I offer these comments and trust that this policy proposal is aimed at mitigating what could exacerbate into much larger and costly legal issues moving forward. Mr. Speaker, I thank the author for his work on Bill 131, and I look to the CLTC for timely and appropriate action in this and other encroachment claims so that CLTC beneficiaries and private property owners can use their land consistent with our laws and establish CLTC policies. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, sir. On the bill, are there any senators wishing to speak on the bill? Gentlelady from Georgia, you're recognized, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I don't necessarily agree with the remarks that were previously made that encroachment is through no fault of their own. I think it's always incumbent on the landowners when they're remodeling their properties, especially, to make sure they're not encroaching. And in this case, I disagree with the findings that the lot is too small to erect a building, unsuitable farming, cannot be used for utilities, roads, or other governmental purposes. None of that was actually studied. And we've seen Two Lovers Point built over the cliff, not just on the cliff, but over the cliff. And I believe in a time when we are looking for utilities to be put throughout Guam, I don't know, but I'm just saying there was really no studies done on that. That's just a speculation. But the thing about this property is, and I completely understand what this homeowner wants, is similar to what happened in Hagat, where we had an encroachment onto government land. And but my issue with this is the same as what we had in that case. We are not making a policy here, or it seems we are comfortable making a policy here that if any landowner encroaches on government property, we are going to give it to that landowner. We're going to let them buy it as opposed to letting them fix their encroachment. And in this case, because it's Chamorro Land Trust property, I think it's very important that that not become the policy of the legislature, that we're going to take care of all private landowners' encroachments by selling them Chamorro Land Trust property. I think if there is another remedy, that's what should occur. As one of the previous speakers stated, the Chamorro Land Trust discussed this years ago, and at that time they asked if there were other encroachments as well, but I don't think the answer was clear that there were, but we do need to know, just like in Agate, if all the other properties are suffering or encroaching, then we need a principled policy for all of them. Or we just, in this case, the facts were they remodeled their home and built out to encroach on the Chamorro Land Trust property and built the guardrail out there. Yes, they need a guardrail, but they could also have built the guardrail on their own property. And it's just been years, so I see the CLTC thinks this is a very simple solution to just sell them the property since they've been encroaching for years now. But I'm just saying, my only issue is I do not think we should continue to make it a policy of this legislature that, because I'll bet there are many, many encroachments on government property, and when they hear this trend, we might even see more. That, don't worry, the legislature is going to take care of you after you've invested on government property to build your own structures. And I just don't think that that should be the policy of the government of Guam. So that's my only objection. Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. On the bill. On the bill, are there any senators wishing to speak on the bill? Gentleman from MTM, sir, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise an objection similar to the retiring speaker for much the same reasons. It seems like this is becoming a trend that we are taking care of private landowners when there is encroachments or some sort of butt up against government property. And I think we do need to kind of come up with a working principle moving forward. Like, are we establishing this as a principle that if you encroach on government land, you can eventually buy that government land? What are the limits to that principle? We sell them some land today, and if they encroach further, do we sell them land in a few more years again? I'm not sure, but I think that we as a body really need to consider the downstream effects of the precedents that we set in this body, especially when it comes to something as limited of a resource as land. And so I do think we need to figure out how many of these encroachments do we got, because the retiring speaker is correct. Once word gets out that the government will take care of you if you got land encroachments and will sell it to you, I'm not sure that's the precedent we want to be setting. And so with that in mind, I object to this measure, and I hope that we can find a more principled approach to how we're going to approach situations like this, or are we just going to let it be open to all? Because really, at the end of the day, that's what I think is most important, is the principle of equal protection under the law. If we're going to allow this for one person, we should allow it for all, or we should allow it for none. And I believe in democracy and the will of the people and the will of the body, and I will follow the process, but I would ask my colleagues to think through this decision very carefully before you decide either way. With that, Mr. Speaker, I yield the rest of my time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator. Congratulations on your newborn. Okay. Gentlelady from Tamuning, ma'am, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, and congratulations to the newborn for Senator Parkinson. Another beautiful girl. Mr. Speaker, I've of course always had the same sentiments. We put boards and commissions in place for a reason, to thoroughly review applications, as well as to provide public hearings, going to the municipality of all these of the villages to seek their recommendations. That's something that we push for, we strive for, because it's going to be thoroughly vetted. However, this particular bill was thoroughly vetted at one time in 2019. Based on the testimony from Joseph Cameron of the Chamorro Land Trust Commission, he stated that Chamorro Land Trust previously approved a resolution in 2019 supporting the sale of this lot, emphasizing the lot has no practical value, too small, unsafe, cliff-like location. Noted land cannot be used for housing and farming. He specifically explained that. So this bill did have an opportunity under the Chamorro Land Trust Board to review. So I think that's what we all hope for, that the scrutiny was provided, the information, and people have the opportunity in the municipality to also chime in on any concerns. By far, I don't expect any of us should be doing a favor for an individual person without going through the process. At least we can ask our constituents, did you go through the process? Did you seek from the board, the commission, the municipality of your village the opportunity to explain your situation? I mean, that's what we all should be doing. This one, however, it did go through even a resolution in 2019. So they did have the opportunity to review this. However, I mean, just thinking how long it's been since it was addressed, I think that's the reason why it's in front of us today. It's just taken way too long. So thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to state some of my concerns.
Thank you very much, ma'am. On the bill, are there any senators wishing to speak on the bill? Gentleman from EPEN, sir, you're recognized.
Buenas noches, Mr. Speaker and colleagues, and Undoklu Nesidos Masi. Thank you to the people of Guam watching on our YouTube stream, Docomo and GTA. And thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to rise and speak on the bill, which is eerily similar to a measure that we debated and discussed in the previous session. And this measure actually gave a parcel of land to the sitting mayor of Hoggett, and the governor had vetoed this bill, and she kind of lectured us a little bit and said that it was inappropriate for us to address a piece of legislation that directly benefits the mayor of Hoggett. And at the time we discussed the bill, I agreed. It's very similar to this bill, Mr. Speaker. And with due respect to the family, I think the main point has been made by some of my colleagues and retiring speakers that this is retail politics. And most people who suffer from property challenges don't know a senator. They don't have access to senators or the legislature. They don't have access to people who can write bills to help them out. And that's kind of the problem, Mr. Speaker. As it was said by retiring speakers, I'm very sure there are other families who have similar challenges, and maybe these other families didn't intentionally encroach on our people's land and then seek front door, back door arrangement with sitting senators to alleviate it. And so I just wanted to again raise those concerns, Mr. Speaker, as the people of Guam watch these sessions. I think they notice a recurring theme here is that we seem to be very inclined, and we do expedited things for special interests. And I only say this is a special interest because it seeks to benefit one family. Well, we have many issues affecting thousands of our people here on Guam, Mr. Speaker. So again, Sidos Masi for the opportunity to rise and speak on the bill.
Thank you very much. On the bill, hang on, sir. Gentlelady from Barragata, ma'am, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and good morning to my colleagues. So just the issue is also that, the idea that we're selling CLTC property, to me, is a principle that we need to resist because really the CLTC was meant as a land restoration program. And so, this can be considered death by 1,000 cuts. Every fractional lot that we sell off could end up, we're losing the land that was meant for land restoration. And so, in principle, I think I disagree with this bill, in addition to other things that were raised by retiring speakers. The other thing, too, is that when we sell off government property, we're lowering the debt ceiling. And so, again, that's death by 1,000 cuts. Every little bit of land that we're selling cumulatively, individually and cumulatively, can impact the debt ceiling of the government of Guam. And, although it may seem practical at first, again, really, I think the onus should have been that you should know where your boundaries are of your land. And the policy to correct after the fact for encroachment. We don't see this being, we're a private developer encroaching on another private property. You would have a different reaction. These private owners would definitely resist any kind of encroachment. And so to say that is it okay to encroach and be, I guess the policy that you're going to be okay, that you can encroach, the government will cover you. But we don't see that in the private sector. The private sector definitely has their, elements of remediation or mediation and resolution. And I think with the government, land is so limited here on this island. The other issue that I see is environmental issues. So for instance, it is a cliff line, right? What are the impacts to sites? the sight lines for their neighbors. You know, that has an impact too for the neighbors that are in that area. You know, the issue of other impacts. So, you know, the cliff line, you know, people say that that's not useful property, but if you think about all our native species, right? Some of our native species, that's their last stand. The cliff line is where they can survive, because everywhere else they're being, you know, affected. You know, the development that's occurring is really taking out their habitat. And there's some specific species that have adapted to the cliff lines. And so what is the impact to that? The other thing is the Army Corps of Engineers. So some things like this, you know, there hasn't been any sort of permitting, any kind of investigation as far as what permitting is required. You know, and the Army Corps of Engineers has specific jurisdiction in the areas where, you know, the ocean meets the land. And so I'm sure BSP has other sort of permitting requirements. And so it may seem simple, a simple fix in certain perspectives, but it's a deeper issue. And I have reservations about this bill for those reasons. Mrs. Masi.
Thank you very much, ma'am. On the bill, Senator Dueñas, sir, you recognize?
Situs Masi, Mr. Speaker, and good morning once again to the people of Guam and those who are paying attention to our proceedings today. This is a relatively short bill, Mr. Speaker, so I think it's important for context of some of the retiring speakers and some of the discussion on this bill to just go ahead and read the legislative findings and intent. So under Section 1 of an act to authorize Chamorro Land Trust to sell a portion of Lot 517 for REM-1 Municipality of Tamuning, consisting of an area of 145 square feet, 138 square meters, and to deposit the proceeds of the sale into the Chamorro Land Trust Infrastructure and Survey Fund. Section 1, Legislative Findings and Intent. Y Legislature Guam finds that in 2018, Start and Nicole Kelly obtained a building permit to make substantial renovations to their home along the cliff line in Perrysville, Tamuning. The types of renovations required the Department of Public Works to make regular inspections of the property, construction phases, and to issue a new occupancy permit before the Kellys were allowed to live in their home. Prior to the issuance of the occupancy permit, DPW inspectors required the Kellys to construct a safety railing along the edge of the cliff line behind their home where a dilapidated old fence once stood. The safety railing spanned the width of the Kelly's lot and was designed to prevent occupants of the property from accidental falls over the cliff. The cliff height vertical exceeds 100 feet, and any fall would result in serious injury or death. Sometime after the occupancy was issued, the Kellys discovered that a narrow parcel of land at the edge of the cliff where the safety railing was built was not their property, but the property of the Chamorro Land Trust. The small fractional lot is accessible only through the Kelly's house lot and has no practical use or value to anyone else except the Kellys. On March 7, 2019, the Chamorro Land Trust Commission adopted CLTC Resolution 29-04, recommending the sale of the fractional lot to the Kellys. As the CLTC has no authority to sell land, including fractional lots and bull cart trails, the CLTC forwarded the recommendation to Y Legislature Guam. It is the intent of Legislature Guam that the Start and Nicole Kelly be authorized to buy a portion of the lot and the proceeds be deposited into the Chamorro Land Trust Commission. Mr. Speaker, as you know, when the government of Guam before used to encroach on properties that belonged to the government of Guam typically, before all government property is now deposited into the Land Trust Commission, it basically was the practice. If there were encroachments, there would be required fair market value, particularly on fractional lots that have no practical use. to any purpose of the Chamorro Land Trust. You couldn't build anything there. It's clear that this land is, part of a property that only belongs to the Kellys. Nobody would ever be able to use it for any other practical purpose. As for it having any shoreline impacts, there's no shoreline there, Mr. Speaker. It's 100 feet above, it's on a cliff. And here we're actually talking about safety. We're talking about safety not only to the family. I'm sure either they have children or children's children, or they may have guests that come to their house to enjoy the beautiful view. They've invested, I'm sure, a significant amount of money into that residence. And I, for one, want to make sure that they're able to purchase this small parcel of land from the Chamorro Land Trust and remit funds to the Chamorro Land Trust to help the Chamorro Land Trust that has no practical purpose to anyone. If anything, Mr. Speaker, if anything but for the safety of those individuals that would visit their home, themselves, their family, their children, and their grandchildren perhaps, and for the fact that it is DPW that required them. I'm sure they wanted to put in a rail anyways, to ensure that they would have safety for their family and their loved ones and anyone, once again, who would visit, or even for that sake, Mr. Speaker, any government agency or other instrumentalities that would be required to be on the property for any reason, and maybe had to do any work that associated with the cliff line. We all want people to not fall over the cliff line. I think that's pretty basic and pretty. Now I understand the reasons for which retiring speakers have risen to speak to some of these issues. I'm sure there have been egregious sales maybe in the past, exchanges, what have you. But not everything comes down to some sort of egregious act. Sometimes, Mr. Speaker, it's just following the laws of Guam and following an inspection report and following what DPW said they had to do in order to occupy a piece of property which I'm sure they pay generous taxes on as well. And I'm sure these are individuals who are upstanding people within our community. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, the Chamorro Land Trust themselves say they have no ability to sell property in this manner and recommended y legislature Guam. There is a saying sometimes, Mr. Speaker, that no good deed goes unpunished. I hope that a good Vice Speaker doesn't get punished for doing something the Chamorro Land Trust asked this body to do, for no practical value for the property, and for the safety of those who now, going forward, would have enjoyment of that property as welcome guests of the family. Tuzmasi, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. On the bill. Any other senators wishing to speak on the bill? No other senator? Mr. Vice Speaker, would you like to close?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to my colleagues for all the discussions on this bill. You know, Mr. Speaker, it's really interesting that perhaps maybe some of my colleagues who spoke their objections to it should actually go up to the property and take a look and see what you can build up there. Because I'm sure you're not going to be able to build anything. It's a cliff line. It's over a 100-foot drop. And it has no impact to if there's any birds that are living on the cliff. It's not going to impact them. Matter of fact, it'll probably provide them some shade with the balcony or something. But, you know, it's a two-way street, Mr. Speaker. We always talk about private property owners that, you know, before they build, they should always look at their boundaries and ensure they're not encroaching on government property. But let's take a look at the flip side on that. How about the government of Guam encroaching onto private property? Which there are thousands of that throughout this island. Did the government do its due diligence in making sure they set their boundaries and find out which is government property versus private property. We can only do what we can to try and correct issues. This issue will be corrected because it does several things. First and foremost, it provides safety for the family and visitors who are visiting the family on their property. Because I don't think anyone can place a value on a life that is lost because of maybe this body's objection to placing a fence there and someone fall off. Second, it provides revenue to the Chamorro Land Trust. Revenue that hasn't been expected because a lot of times the Chamorro Land Trust has been truly underfunded. And third, it provides additional taxation to the government because now they'll be having 138 square meters added to their property tax. So do we always look at the sins of the past of what we think are backyard deals or, absolutely not. And perhaps if we get our mindset off of that and start looking for the good in people and start looking in the good that we do in this legislative body, then perhaps we can all start moving forward and having a greater island and a greater community. Because the crab mentality of, well, one person's doing better, then, we pull them down because we don't want them to shine any better than anyone else. And, one of my colleagues has spoken about the veto bill. Well, the governor didn't veto it, it lapsed into law. And did they do their due diligence? So we can always look at the fault and blame in people and what we want to do and what we're trying to do. But let's start looking for the good. The good in people wanting to just make their lives better. The good in government wanting to make lives better for our people so that we can have this mass exodus of our people stop. Because people are tired of the government fighting. We shouldn't be fighting against each other, the administration versus the legislature. We should be protecting one another on this island. This is a very simple bill, very simple. It just takes a fraction of the lot, the portion, just a portion, 138 square meters, plus or minus some. We did it in Agana where it was a sliver of property again that was sold, and now what is erected there? A 4-unit apartment that provides homes to people, provided a greater tax base for the government, and it gave the Chamorro Land Trust additional revenues. So there's always a good in something. And fractional lots, it doesn't do good for anyone. So again, I ask my colleagues for their support on this measure. Let's start looking for the good and stop looking for the fault and bad in everything that we try to do in this body. Because it affects our people and our community. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I motion to move the bill down to the third reading.
Thank you, sir. On the motion to move Bill 131-38 COR as amended by the committee to the third reading, are there any objections? Hearing and seeing no objection, motion carries. Next bill, Bill number 160-38 COR.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to move Bill 160-38 COR back to committee.
On the motion to move Bill 160-38 COR back to committee, are there any objections? Hearing and seeing no objection, Bill 160-38 COR is moved back to the committee. Next bill, Bill number 206-38 COR. Gentle lady from Tamuning, Senator Taitigui, ma'am, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move to place Bill number 206-38, COR, as amended by the Committee on Health, Veterans Affairs, which is an act to add a new 12202C, amend 12205C and Section 12206, add a new 12206.1 and amend 12207, all of Article 2, Chapter 12, Title 10, Guam Code annotated, relative to building a more diverse and sustainable healthcare workforce on Guam by expanding leisure pathways for foreign medical graduates and establishing a local Conrad 30 J1 physician waiver program into the third reading file, and I would like to speak on it.
You can proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and colleagues. I rise today to ask this body to support Bill 206, a bill I introduced to address the growing shortage of physicians on island and to ensure that licensing laws keep pace with the reality of today's global healthcare workforce. Across the U.S. and around the world, jurisdictions are competing for the same limited pool of qualified medical professions. If Guam is to recruit and retain physicians, particularly in specialized fields or licensing framework, this must remain modern, clear, and competitive with other jurisdictions that have already taken steps to expand responsible licensure pathways. Several states have already adopted laws creating alternative or supervised licensure pathways. Florida, through the House Bill 415 in 2024, has created pathways allowing internationally trained physicians to practice under provisional licensures while completing supervised clinical requirements. Arizona, through House Bill 2045 in 2024, enacted legislation recognizing certain foreign trained physicians licensed in other jurisdictions through alternative pathways and still require rigorous competency evaluation. Then there's Tennessee, through House Bill 1312 in 2023, has implemented a supervised provisional licensures model for internationally trained physicians to practice under structured oversight while meeting state requirements. Even closer to home, the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands allows foreign trained physicians to practice under the oversight of its licensing board while meeting local regulatory requirements. In other words, Guam is not charting unknown territory. We are playing catch up. Mr. Speaker, I would like to thank the physicians who testified at the public hearing as well as those who submitted written testimony on this bill. I appreciate the concerns they raised and the recommendations they offered. Their feedback was taken seriously, and the bill was amended to address those concerns. I also wanted to thank Chairperson Senator Sabrina Salas-Mantanani for hearing this measure and for accepting the amendments I requested so that the bill reflects the input of the Guam medical community. However, there have been several misconceptions about what this bill does and does not do. So I want to clarify those points. Bill 206 does preserve rigorous professional standards. Guam law already requires foreign medical graduates to obtain certification through the Educational Commission for Foreign Medical Graduates, or what's called the ECFMG, the National Credential Verification Body used across the United States to confirm medical education credentials and examination passage. The bill does not lower licensing standards or grant automatic licensures. Every applicant must still be reviewed and approved by the Board of Medical Examiners, which retains full authority to determine whether an applicant meets the qualifications necessary to practice medicine on Guam. Bill 206 does clarify examination requirements. Foreign medical graduates must pass a medical licensing examination accepted to the board, such as the United States Medical Licensing Examination, which is the USMLE, or comparable approved exam. Bill 206 does not eliminate residency or postgraduate training requirements. Guam law already requires physicians to complete at least 36 months of postgraduate medical training. This bill preserves that. What Bill 206 does, it clarifies how the board may evaluate foreign postgraduate training, specifically to allow the board to determine whether training completed outside the U.S. is substantially equivalent to Accreditation Council of Graduate Medical Education, or ACME, standards, providing clear statutory authority for evaluating international training programs while maintaining oversight. What Bill 206 now establishes is a supervised provisional licensure pathway. At the recommendation of physicians who testified, the bill authorizes the board to require supervised provisional practice for applicant trained outside the ACGM accredited programs before granting full licensure. The bill does not try to establish a new Conrad 30 J1 physician's waiver program. We know that this program already exists on Guam and is eligible. What the bill does do is codify in Guam law that Department of Public Health and Social Services serves as the state equivalent health agency responsible for administrating the Conrad 30 program, and it establishes reporting requirements so that the legislature can track how this federal recruitment tool is being used. Legislatures routinely codify federal programs into local law to clearly designate responsible agencies, ensure compliance with federal requirement, and provide transparency and oversight at the local level. At the recommendation of the medical professionals, the amended bill removed languages from the introduced version, prioritizing placement at GMH and community health centers, recognizing that Guam as a whole is medically underserved and ensuring physicians may practice across the healthcare system, including private clinics. Mr. Speaker, during the public hearing, Dr. Shea suggested that this bill should include pathways for foreign trained nurses. I hear his concern, as many of us. However, nurses cannot be included in this bill because it amends the Physicians Practice Act. It's different. Nursing licensure is governed separately under the Nurses Practice Act and must be addressed through separate legislation, in which we are drafting at this time to include nurses in this program, which is forthcoming. Mr. Speaker, I also want to acknowledge concerns related to immigration barriers and licensing costs that physicians may face when considering practice in Guam. Those challenges are real, but they are largely governed by federal immigration law and national licensing structures, which are outside the direct control of the government of Guam. I want to recognize the governor's office that is currently working with federal partners to explore potential waivers or relief for certain fees applicable to Guam. What we can do here in this branch of government is ensure that our own statutes don't create unnecessary barriers for qualified physicians who are willing to practice right here on our beautiful island of Guam. So, Mr. Speaker, colleagues, Bill 206 ensures Guam licensure law to provide clear, modern pathways for physicians who meet rigorous standards. It's not a silver bullet to our physician shortage, but it is an important step forward. This bill gives the Guam Medical Board examiners clear statutory tools to evaluate qualified physicians while preserving patient safety safeguards. Mr. Speaker, I've been working with doctors about this particular bill and how we can improve it, as we did during the public hearing. But over the weekend, I had the opportunity to work with Dr. Thorpe, and he provided, and everyone has a copy of his letter that he provided, that I will be proffering amendments based on his recommendations. It is as late, Mr. Speaker, as Sunday night that we were working on this bill to ensure that when it comes to the floor, that we try as much as we can to cross our T's and dot our I's. So that being said, Mr. Speaker, I yield to any questions my colleagues may have or any concerns they may have. Thank you.
Senator, did you say you had some amendments?
I'm sorry?
Did you say you have amendments to the bill?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I would like to proffer those amendments either after my colleagues speak, or I could do it before. And by the way, Mr. Speaker, I failed to mention, I'd make a motion to include Dr. Thor's email, his letter to me, into the committee report.
Okay,
so I'd like to append it to the committee report as well. For this bill.
Let's do that now. Let's go ahead and let's append Dr. Thorpe's letter to the committee report for this bill.
Yes, sir.
Any objections? Hearing seen no objection, motion carries. Why don't we go ahead and
so I'll go ahead and, if you'd
amendments.
like, Mr. Speaker, I could do these amendments and have them passed out. Okay. So if you give me 1 minute, I'll have the clerks pass it out.
It's 1 minute recess.
Okay.
Legislation is back from session. Senator Tidy, will you have the floor, ma'am?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And colleagues, I know that if you have the opportunity in the committee report to review the markup of the bill in red, you'll see quite a bit of changes were made there. And fortunately, like I said, I was working over the weekend with Dr. Thorpe to try and address some of the other concerns, just to make things a lot safer for our community on doctors coming to Guam practicing. So the first one is based on his recommendation in, on his letter, number 1, minimal specialty-specific practice experience. And this is to add in a new J to section 4 of the bill to read, specialty practice experience. In addition to the requirements of this section, an applicant who is a graduate of a foreign medical school shall demonstrate not less than 3 years of independent clinical practice experience in the applicant's area of specialty, completed after completion of post-grad medical training. Such experience shall be verified in a manner prescribed by the board Experience obtained slowly as a medical officer, intern, or house officer shall not satisfy this requirement unless the board determines that such experience involve independent clinical responsibility consists with specialty practice standards. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, on the amendment, any discussion on the amendment? Any discussion on the amendment? No discussion? It's like, General Lady from California, may I be recognized?
If the author would yield to just explain the independent clinical practice, this requires 3 years of independent clinical practice. Is that a medical term, or do they mean, I'm hoping it doesn't restrict only those who like, that we can also accept those who've worked under hospitals or other clinics.
Okay, the
Would you
question
yield to
is...
the question?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, the question is to ask if the three-year experience would eliminate the ability for those practicing. The FSMB requirements already have that included in their qualifications. It says 3 years. So if you look at the definition, stand by. Okay. Mr. Speaker, I'm just trying to get the definition for the federal, this section of the FSMB. It's a Federation State Medical Board, and they have certain, which is a nonprofit organization that oversee certain requirements that are due. And in their definition, it possesses 3 years of medical practice experience. It's a qualification that's already in an accredited organization, nonprofit organization that oversees the practices of medical physicians. So it's something that is already consistent, and it's an area in which we're trying to have that same kind of consistency. So there is a requirement of 3 years.
To the author for yielding to that question, yes. So if this is consistent with those standards, then I have no objection to it. My only, I just wanted to make sure that that word independent clinical practice does not preclude us from getting doctors very experienced in hospitals or other large organizations. And so I would just thank the author for this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. On the amendment, any other senators wishing to speak on the amendment? General Lady from Barragata, may I be recognized?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just have a question regarding, so there's a lot of discretion in the bill given to the board, and so my concern is, what does the board look at when they're verifying the experience? Do we have any kind of guidelines that the board would follow?
Would you yield to the question, ma'am?
Absolutely, Mr. Chair, and thank you for that question. As I mentioned earlier, that the FSMB, has requirements that they overlook when approving any type of physicians, as well as areas such as the ECFMG, which is the Educational Commission for Foreign Medical Graduates. We have the ACGM, which is Accreditation Council for Graduates on Medical Education. These are areas in which there are already guidelines in place, and it requires that the board, on our level, the Guam Medical Board of Examiners, they also follow these same rigorous requirements from these agencies. So if that answers your question, usually the board does go after these accredited well, don't want to call them nonprofit organizations, but they basically are. They're the ones that go out and accredit the hospital, give accreditation to hospitals, give accreditation to certain doctors and physicians, and that they all follow the same rigorous, exams For instance, the World Directory of School of Medicine, they oversee the accreditation of not just hospitals, but doctors, and ensure that they receive the 6 master training core skills, which is patient care, medical knowledge, communication, learning. So I'd say ACGM, but it's ACGM, are areas which the Guam Medical Board of Examinations, they are very well versed and understand some of these qualifications that are needed. So we're just staying consistent with them and ensuring that they follow those guidelines as well.
Did that answer your question?
Yes, it does. But I'm just wondering if it's maybe better just to include that language in the amendment to make it align with those gold standards, the high standards that we want to make sure these physicians follow, because right now it's open for interpretation.
Go ahead, ma'am.
Mr. Speaker, if I may reply to that. There is a requirement of all physicians that they have to follow certain guidelines and requirements in testing, as well as continuing education that are required. So these guidelines are not something that they can bypass or given the authority to bypass, because there's still accreditation that's required by these physicians, and it's all governed under the FSMB as well. So they follow these same procedures. So it's not something that the Board of Medical Examiners can bypass.
To clarify this, it's already basic, this is an addition.
Yes, and remember, there's also federal guidelines that are required too, and that is under the Educational Commission for Foreign Medical Graduates. So even before we get into our arena of the Guam Medical Board, they have to go through the rigorous federal guidelines, which is under, again, the Education Commission on Foreign Medical Graduates, which is called the ECFMG, before they can even apply to any jurisdiction, whether Puerto Rico, Commonwealth, or Tennessee, or Arizona. They have to follow these.
Thank you. Does that answer your question, ma'am?
It does somewhat, but if you look at the rest of the law, Title 10, Chapter 12, there are some potential, I think, loopholes. So when you look at some of the sections, there's a lot of discretionary language. So it talks about those standards, but it also talks about an equivalent to those standards. So although it's true that these physicians should follow that, but according to our law, our own statute, there is a catch-all phrase where it could be an equivalent or it could be a successor to this board. And so maybe perhaps, my thing is maybe we could tighten the language a little bit more. That's my suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
May I?
Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you for allowing me to respond to that. I'm very open to any areas that the good senator wants to tighten any language, but please take in consideration that we don't want to provide a loophole that she mentioned earlier by confusing one area to another area and saying, okay, well, it doesn't mention it here, but we can do it here because it mentions it here. You have to remember that the ACGM and also the ECFMG all have certain requirements beforehand to meet before they can even be involved of taking advantage of any type of ability for foreign medical graduates to practice in any jurisdiction. So in the U.S., that is, in the U.S. So, but if the author has an amendment that she'd like to proffer, then I'm open to it, or if there's one that we can, for the sake of time, ask legal to ensure that that section can be incorporated somewhere in the bill.
Well, why don't we focus on the discussion is on this amendment.
Right, exactly.
Okay?
So
So, and any other amendments other than an amendment to this amendment, we'll hold off until on the main discussion. Okay? So on the amendment, General Lady from Agate, ma'am, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I really just would like to ask the author of this bill, because this is the first time I'm seeing all of these different changes and different amendments. And I understand you mentioned that it was kind of last minute. I had a phone call with Dr. Thorpe. But was it communicated to you whether or not Dr. Thorpe, or did you have any other conversations with other physicians that might have concerns about these new amendments being inserted into the bill that was marked up that's online already? Because, I mean, if these are substantive changes, then, you know, I would be in a position to refer it back to the committee. Okay.
Would you refer?
Oh. Well, I'd first
Yield
like
to the question.
hear a response.
Okay, for the question, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for that question. Because the conversation was not just the conversation about the bill. We gave the bill to Dr. Thorpe as amended. So all the changes, so he was able to see what changes made based on the public hearing of all the physicians that showed up and the testimonies that were submitted. We made substantial changes to the bill. What these amendments do is just based, if you read his comments on his letter, it's just to strengthen it, to ensure that there are certain guidelines that are needed. For instance, of course, with each amendment, I'll explain why it was changed, but I think in the letter, he talks about it clearly, but no, there's nothing substantial about it, because he did review the bill after it was marked up. And he looked at the areas and saw, because he was one that had more concerns than any other physician that testified. And the other physician that testified, we ensured his amendments also went into the bill. So this is just the last minute, because we saw that Dr. Thorpe, again, had some concerns, and that's why we're addressing it today in these amendments.
Does that answer your question, ma'am? Any other? You still have the floor. On this
Point of
amendment.
information, Mr. Speaker? Just point of information.
Sure.
Just one more. These amendments were to protect the community for, you know, safety-wise. That's what these amendments do. So as far as substantial, it does nothing other than just protect the community. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Senator, you still have the floor, ma'am. On the amendment, you still, okay?
Yeah, I just wanted to when I'm reading the letter, though, from Dr. Thorpe, the reason why I asked that question is because in the third paragraph, while he talks about these changes and the markups, he did say that the removal of the public facility priority placement language all represent substantive and welcome changes. That's why I asked if these changes were so substantive that would we need to refer it back to the committee. But thank you, Senator.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay. On the amendment, any other senators wishing to speak on the amendment? Are there any objections to the amendment? Would you like to close on the amendment? Okay. There are no objections to the amendment, to this amendment, to line 24, page 5. No objections? So ordered. Senator Taidigu, you still have the floor, ma'am, on...
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My next amendment, again, line on 25, page 5, is to add a new K to section 4 of the bill to read. K, offer of employment. An applicant who is a graduate of a foreign medical school seeking licensures under this section shall provide proof of a bona fide offer of employment from a healthcare facility, clinic, or medical practice located on Guam. Such offer shall be verified in a manner prescribed by the board and shall identify the intended practice setting and scope of service to be provided. And it's very self-explanatory. You know, if you're going to come to Guam as a foreign medical foreign medical physician, then you need to be supervised under a clinic or an individual doctor as they move forward. So that's just a protective measure. We're not looking for a loophole here to allow anybody to come on the island and practice through the foreign medical practice. So a legitimate offer of a job is required by either the clinic or a physician himself.
On the amendment to line 24, page 5, to add a new K to section 4 of the bill. Are there any other senators wishing to speak on the amendment? On the amendment, no other senators? Senator Tidiwin, you want to close?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll waive my closing.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are there any objections to this amendment? No objections? It's ordered.
Okay. The second amendment is on line 26, page 5, to add a new 1 to section 4 of the bill to read.
Hang on.
Oh, okay.
It says line 26, mine says line 24, page 5.
I have the one that add a new 1 to section 4 of the bill to read. So I have to add a new 1 to section 4 of the bill. So that's on line 26, page 5.
Okay.
Okay, no, I see. It's okay. These are my amendments I brought from the office, Mr. Speaker, so I see what's going on. It's just a mistake on our end. We'd make that correction.
So what is it? So which one are we doing? Line 24, page 5?
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, if I have 1 minute, because I have one amendment here that is not jiving with the line 26, page 5. But it is the amendment that adds a new 1 to section 4 of the bill to read.
1 or L?
1. I mean L, yeah.
Why don't we take a, let's
Yeah,
let's
give
take
me
a
1
little
second.
recess.
Okay.
Back from recess. Senator Tidiwin, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for that short recess, just to verify our numbers are correct. So this next amendment is on line 24, page 5, to add a new small letter L. It looks like a 1, but it's a small letter L to section 4 of the bill to read. So letter L is a recent clinical practice requirement. An applicant who is a graduate of a foreign medical school shall demonstrate active clinical practice within the 5 years immediately preceding the date of application. The board may, for good cause, show waiver or modify this requirement if the applicant demonstrates continued clinical competency through the additional training, education, or assessment acceptable to the board. And Mr. Chair, I ask for legal or clerks to make any technical changes if necessary. Just to cover my angles there too in the event. So.
Let's take a minute recess, please. Legislation is back from recess. Senator Teitig, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, this amendment is for safety reasons. I think it's self-explanatory. At least the physician who are coming to practice on Guam has been practicing for at least 5 years before coming here. You know, as we're seeing AI and technology changing so rapidly and quickly, and medicine changing so rapidly and quickly, that it's important to keep up to date. And this amendment allows them. It allows the board to make sure that this is a requirement that's put in place. Thank you.
Thank you. On the amendment to line 24, page 5, to add a new L to section 4, are there any senators wishing to speak? No senators wishing to speak. Ma'am, you want to close it?
I'll waive.
Okay. On the amendment, are there any objections? Hearing seen no objection, motion carries. Senator Teitig, we still have one more amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is on line 24, page 5, to add a new D6 and D7 to 12207 in section 6 of the bill to read.
Okay, hang on. Because the one we've been passing on is line 24, page 8.
I'm sorry. Page 8, yes. Yes.
Okay, so line 24, page 8, and add a new D6 and D7 to subsection 12207 in section 6 of the bill.
Okay.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead and complete it. I'm sorry.
And of course, I will make an amendment at the end to add legal and clerks to make any technical changes if necessary.
Is there? Go ahead.
Okay. So to add a new D6 and D7 to 12207 in section 6 of the bill to read. 6, the applicant shall demonstrate not less than 3 years of independent clinical practice experience in the applicant's area of specialty completed after the completion of postgraduate medical training. Such experience shall be verified in a manner prescribed by the board. Experience obtained solely as a medical officer, intern, or house officer shall not satisfy this requirement unless the board determines that such experience involved independent clinical responsibility consists with specialty practice standards. And then number 7, the applicant shall demonstrate active clinical practice within the 5 years immediately preceding the date of application. The board may, for good cause, show waive or modify this requirement if the applicant demonstrates continued clinical competency through additional training, education, and assessment applicable to the board, and of course, for legal or the clerks to make any technical changes to the numbering or the page numbering or the letters if necessary.
On the amendment, any senator wishing to speak on the amendment? No senator wishing to speak on the amendment? You want to close?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On closing on this particular amendment, I just wanted to let everyone know that it is in section 2207 in a different location. So we're basically adding this scenario in the same section as 2206, but to ensure that this is clear and precise about the 3-year requirement and the 5 years as well. So that being said, Mr. Speaker, that's my last amendment.
Okay. Any objections to the amendment? Hearing and seeing no objections, motion carries. Senator, you still have, is that all your amendments?
That's all my amendments.
Okay.
Thank you.
On the bill as amended, are there any senators wishing to speak on the bill as amended? Gentleman from Mamung Totomaiti, sir, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this bill. One of the big things we talk about as a problem on Guam is we experience a level of brain drain where we invest so many resources into people, have all this advanced training, and they go somewhere else for that training and that investment into them to be enjoy the fruits of that labor by another jurisdiction. And so in any capacity that Guam can do that to somewhere else where we are the recipients of the benefits of a brain drain, I think we should take that opportunity, especially when it comes to something as important as doctors and potentially nurses in the future. I think this is smart legislation, and I urge my colleagues to support this legislation, and I thank the good senator for putting this legislation out. With that, I yield the rest of my time. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, sir. On the bill as amended. On the bill as amended. Any senator wishing to speak on the bill as amended? Gentlelady from Zonia, ma'am, you're recognized.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank the author for doing the work on this bill and pushing it forward, and for those who came to testify as well, who included former Senator Dennis Rodriguez, Chris Anderson, Melissa Mofness, the Director of Public Health and Social Services, Teresa Arreola, Bistra Mendiola, Dr. Jonathan Thorpe, Dr. Thomas Shea, Naomi Ezra, who's a social worker, and John Martinez also testified. And pretty much the testimony was all in favor. There was, I think, a strange point made that by Public Health that they support the intent of the bill. However, they are waiting for the governor's office to transmit another piece of legislation to the legislature shortly. We've been hearing that for quite a while. And so I just wanted to ask the sponsor of the bill if she, or the committee chair, if they ever received anything from the governor's office that has, that we were able to either incorporate or use in doing the markup on this bill.
Either the chair or the sponsor of the bill?
I have not received anything from the governor's office.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question, actually. You know, it was very disheartening because I've been working on this bill since last year, August, and trying to move this bill forward, working with Guam Memorial Hospital as well. You know, the first legislation that I wrote, I sent it to Guam Memorial Hospital to have their legal look at it, and we made some modifications based on their concerns before introducing the bill. And then I was told that a bill might come down to do pretty much the same thing and asked to wait. But, you know, Mr. Speaker, sickness does not wait for anybody. You know, we need to move forward. So I've moved this bill forward, but also invite any other legislation that may come through to complement it or even do more for our community, especially when it comes to healthcare on this island that we lack the ability of have enough of, that too many people leaving this island have to go and seek help there. So other than that, I have not heard anything after that. They were said they would invite me to a meeting, and then they never did. I never got invited. So other than that, that's what happened so far under my preview as the author of the legislation. Thank you.
Did I answer your question?
Yes, Jesus Masi for yielding to that question to the author and to the oversight chair. There also was no testimony by the Guam Board of Medical Examiners who's being asked to implement this as to their ability to do that. But we know from their meeting minutes that this is something they said they are going to wait for the governor's office on. But in the meantime, we also saw that the Guam Board of Medical Examiners had met with the FSMB representatives who came to Guam. So they actually came to Guam. And so I'm just bringing that up and hoping that we are not going to get any veto or pushback of this legislation after all the work has been done and all the opportunity for input was made available. And I believe that the changes made in committee actually are very good in light of the testimony that we did receive. And I think in the most recent Guam Board of Medical Examiners meeting, they talked about the FSMB promising that in order to implement a program like this, they would train the lawyers for the Guam Board of Medical Examiners, and they would, and any other personnel that's needed to be trained in order to implement this. So I hope to see a very smooth transition and immediate implementation, training for all of those who necessary, and expanded healthcare. Increased specialists coming to Guam. That's really, for me, the most exciting part of this bill, is that we might get specialists who right now we are not able to attract to Guam or retain, and I think this is what the people of Guam deserve, is these increased specialists and increased physicians. Sizos Masi, Mr. Chair, and Sizos Masi again to the author of the bill.
Thank you very much. On the bill as amended, gentleman from Talafofo, sir, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to register brief comments regarding Bill 206. While I agree with the bill's intent, which aims to address critical gaps in our local healthcare system by encouraging the employment of foreign-trained physicians in Guam, including the creation of a physician waiver program, I am concerned that moving forward with this measure as drafted without considering a similar effort which is currently under review by the executive branch might require us to circle back to the same issue to rewrite or otherwise blend what appears to be two distinctly different approaches. We as policymakers have quite a challenge here, and it's surely not a new one to this legislature and those across America simultaneously trying to address the twin problems of a surplus of physicians or a lack thereof, and of geographic inequities in access to physician services. We are not in Houston, Texas, or Hilo, Hawaii, but our three locations are all struggling with this issue, as are other communities across America. Mr. Speaker, I recognize that based on official testimony from the Department of Public Health and Social Services regarding Bill 206, that similar proposal is expected to be released by the executive. According to DPHSS, the proposal is the result of ongoing work involving public health, the Guam Board of Medical Examiners, the Guam Memorial Hospital Authority, and the Guam Behavioral Health and Wellness Center, and the proposal of the executive has been thoroughly vetted and guided by the Federation of State Medical Boards. Members of the Federation of State Medical Boards visited Guam on January 6, 2026, per testimony from Public Health Director Therese Ariola, acknowledging the request from Public Health to ensure a unified approach that incorporates the expert recommendations and collective input of our local medical leadership. I still offer that Bill 206 helps highlight the serious circumstances impacting the delivery of safe and quality health care to our citizens. Mr. Speaker, Bill 206 has helped, okay, I'll repeat that, has helped move discussions forward among healthcare leaders and policymakers across the executive and legislative branches of this government on this important matter. Recognizing that the executive branch has expressed a willingness to work together with our branch on a unified approach in developing pathways for foreign-trained physicians to work in Guam, I'm of the opinion that we ought to allow some time before moving forward with Bill 206. But absent that, and absent that follow-through on the part of Adelup and Public Health, I am confident that Bill 206 will receive the review and support that are needed to bring this policy proposal over the finish line. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to share these brief remarks regarding Bill 206, and I want to thank the measure's sponsor for working on a potential policy solution to the workforce crisis that is impacting the delivery of safe and quality health care for the people of Guam. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
You're welcome. On the bill as amended. On the bill as amended. Any other senator wishing to speak on the bill as amended? No other senator wishing to speak. Senator Tairigu, do you wish to close?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I thank my colleagues for their comments and some suggestions that are made. Now, not every bill is a perfect bill. We do our very best. And then later on, if the event we find something that doesn't work or needs to be added to, then we come back to this body and create legislation that makes amendment to current Guam Code annotated. But the point is that this body is moving forward. We're not being stagnant. We're addressing the concerns, the shortage of physicians on this island, and legislation, of course, that will also address nurses as well moving forward. That's coming up shortly. But Mr. Speaker, we're not circling back here. I don't think that any legislation that comes forward is going to change what this bill has put into place, and that is safety measures for our community, providing the work that, and by the way, when I say work, I'm not talking about we did not consult with doctors, we did. Are you saying that those doctors' concerns don't matter? Of course they do. And as far as the SMB, we are following their standards. That's not something they're going to create for Guam, different standards that require for CNMI or any state. They have standards, and basically this bill is following their standards. They're not going to go out of the rim of what they put together that took years to ensure that their accreditation as the SMMB, as a board, is sound. So, Mr. Speaker and colleagues, I thank everyone again for their thoughtful decisions and questions on Bill 206-38 COR. And again, I thank the physicians who submitted testimony and helped shape the amendments before us today. As discussed, this bill does not lower standards or bypass the Guam Board of Medical Examiners. It preserves existing requirements while giving the board clearer tools to evaluate qualified physicians. Guam continues to face the real challenges in recruiting and retaining doctors. While this bill is not a single solution, it is an important step toward ensuring our laws keep pace with today's healthcare workforce and help improve access to care for our community. And for these reasons alone, I respectfully ask for your support for Bill 206-38 as amended. And I would like to also make a further amendment to add co-sponsors, Mr. Speaker, if I may. I'd like to add Senator Therese Trelahi as a co-sponsor, Senator Shelley Calvo, Vice Speaker Tony Ada, Senator Chris Barnett, Senator Sabrina Salas Mantanani, Senator Will Parkinson. Thank you so much for that, Senator, for your comments. Senator Sabina Perez. Okay. If there's anyone else that'd like to be a co-sponsor, Mr. Speaker, yourself. Okay, so I'm so sorry. Mr. Speaker, as a co-sponsor. If there's anyone else. Okay, that being said, Mr. Speaker, I make that amendment to add these co-sponsors to this legislation.
Thank you. On the amendment to add co-sponsors, Senator Talahi, Senator Calvo, Vice Speaker Ada, Senator Barnett, Senator Salas Matanani, Senator Parkinson, Senator Paris, and myself. As co-sponsors, any objections? Hearing, seeing no objection, motion carries.
And that, as a caveat to Mr. Speaker, I recommend, not recommend, but I highly encourage the governor to continue to, and her staff to continue to send in this bill, the bill that they have said they have proffered for many months, and look forward to addressing that bill as too, and hopefully it will complement each other, both bills. So that being said, Mr. Speaker, I move to place Bill 206-38 into the third reading file for voting.
On that motion, are there any objections? Hearing and seeing no objection, motion carries. Next on the agenda is Bill number 218-38 COR. Senator Calvo, ma'am, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move to place Bill number 218-38 COR on the third reading file, and I wish to discuss it.
Any objections? You can proceed.
Proceed. Thank you. Colleagues, there are moments in the life of people when something as seemingly simple as a word reveals itself to be anything but simple. Moments when language becomes more than a tool for communication. It becomes a mirror of identity, a vessel of memory, and a declaration of dignity. Today we are called into one of those moments. Bill 218-38 is not merely about adopting a standardized spelling. It is about making a conscious collective decision about who we are, how we honor our past, and how we present ourselves to the world as an island in general. It is about aligning our laws, our institutions, and our public voice with the truth of our heritage. For generations, the identity of the first people of Guam has been expressed in different ways, sometimes shaped by colonial influence, sometimes by convenience, and sometimes by inconsistencies. And while those variations may seem small on the surface, they carry deeper implications. Because when a people's name is uncertain, their story can become uncertain. When the way we refer to the people of Guam is inconsistent, the message we send both to our own children, to the world, can become unclear. This measure asks us to bring that clarity. It asks us to affirm in a unified and deliberate way the use of tomorrow as the official and consistent term across all government, laws, documents, and communications. And in doing so, it calls us to recognize that this is not simply about orthography. It is about identity and integrity. Language is powerful. It shapes perception. It preserves knowledge. It carries the voices of heritage forward into the present. Within it lives the resilience of a people who have endured colonization, war, and profound change, yet have never lost the essence of who they are. When we take the step to standardize Chamorro, we are acknowledging that this language, this identity, deserves to be represented with care, accuracy, and respect at the highest levels of governance. We often speak about cultural preservation as if it is something abstract, something that belongs in museums, in classrooms, or in ceremonial spaces. But preservation is also found in the everyday choices we make. It is found in the words where we use the names we recognize and the standards we uphold. This bill brings preservation into the very framework of our government. It ensures that every policy, every document, every official communication reflects a commitment to honoring the indigenous identity of this island. And its impact reaches far beyond symbolism. In our schools, this measure will serve as a foundation for authenticity. It will give educators a clear and unified standard, allowing them to teach with confidence and consistency. It will help students see their heritage reflected, accuracy in the materials they study, strengthening their connection to their roots and fostering deeper sense of pride in who this island, this identity, this heritage is. When young people understand their identity clearly, they carry themselves differently. They move through the world with a stronger sense of belonging and purpose. So in our tourism industry, this bill strengthens the story we tell. Guam is not simply a destination. It defines by its history and its living culture. Visitors come here seeking more than scenery. They come seeking meaning, connection, and authenticity. By presenting a unified and accurate representation of the Chamorro heritage, we enhance that experience. We invite the world to engage with us, not through approximation, but through truth, and in doing so, we elevate both respect and opportunity. In our relationships beyond this island, this measure carries weight. It signals that Guam is a community grounded in its identity, one that values its indigenous heritage and is international about preserving it. In regional and global spaces where cultures intersect and identities are often simplified, this clarity matters. It commands recognition, it fosters respect, and it positions Guam as a place that knows who it is and is confident on how it presents itself. At the same time, this bill addresses a very real and practical challenge. The use of multiple spellings has created confusion not only for those outside our island, but within our own community. Students, educators, families, and even government agencies have navigated uncertainty about that. Is correct. What is preferred and what is respectful. Over time, the inconsistencies can erode understanding and weaken the very identity we actually seek to protect. Bill 21838 resolves it. It establishes a clear, authoritative standard, one that brings alignment across all sectors. It removes ambiguity and replaces it with coherence. And in doing so, it allows us to move forward together, speaking in one voice when we name the first people of this island. We often see that Guam's greatest strength lies in its culture, its tradition, its history, its unique identity. We describe these as our greatest assets, the very things that set us apart and draw the world to our shores. And yet, if we are honest, we have not always treated these assets with the consistencies they deserve. We have allowed something as fundamental as the spelling of our own people name to remain unsettled. So today we have that opportunity to change that, because a single consistent spelling tomorrow is not just a technical correction. It is a statement of unity. It is a declaration that we will no longer allow fragmentation in something so central to who we are. It reflects a broader commitment to honoring the heritage of Guam, not only in words, but in action. And there is something deeply meaningful in embedding that commitment into law. Laws that are just rules are not just rules. They are reflections of our values. They are future generations that matter to us, what we choose to protect and what we believe was worth preserving. By enshrining Chamorro in our statutes and policy, we are ensuring that this commitment endures and that it is not temporary, not optional, but foundational. It is how we build a future that is both rooted and forward-looking, a future where progress does not come at the expense of identity, but is strengthened by it. A future where our children inherit our not confusion, but clarity, nor uncertainty, but pride. So colleagues, this bill is thoughtful, is strategic, and it is deeply meaningful. It strengthens our cultural foundation while supporting education, enhancing tourism, and elevating Guam's presence on the global stage. It is a measure that recognizes identity is not incidental. It is essential. So today we're not simply deciding on a word. We are deciding how we honor Guam. We are deciding how we carry forward a legacy. And we are deciding how we define ourselves in the eyes of generations to come and the global stage. Let us choose to be clear. Let us choose to be consistent. Let us choose to be respectful. And above all, let us choose to stand firmly in the truth, unified in name, grounded in heritage, and confident in the future we are shaping together. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. On the bill, gentleman from Talahofasher, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute to the discussion on Bill 218, and I thank the measure's sponsor for her steadfast commitment to celebrating our Chamorro culture, language, and traditions. During our discussion last year regarding Bill 130, which was signed into law as Public Law 38-30, I opined that such a simple change in law as Bill 218 similarly proposes is only as good as the work that is put forward by those who desire to learn, practice, and celebrate our heritage. Mr. Speaker, in approving Bill 130 last year, the governor of Guam wrote that the changes in law may seem small to some in our community. However, the governor argued that every name, every phrase, every written word reflects the spirit of our people, and that she was certain that our people will continue to fight for our language, not as a mere relic of the past, but as a living, breathing expression of who we are. Mr. Speaker, I appreciate the executive's acknowledgement that the Chamorro language does not and should not belong in the past. On the contrary, the language, culture, and traditions of our indigenous people of Guam represent arguably the invisible thread which connects us to each other and to the land, water, and the natural resources with which we have all been blessed. This debate has raged among local language scholars, the Common Island resident, and hundreds across the diaspora who love our language, our heritage, and culture. Previous legislatures may not have been brave enough or have had the will to take on such a task as this, as outlined in Bill 218. Will those championing this current effort be enough here? The sheer cost to implement goes beyond a simple BBMR fiscal note. Every single reference across the three branches of the government of Guam will need to be able to change this. Mr. Speaker, I had the privilege to spearhead efforts 18 years ago, working with our island community and the United States Mint in the 2009 DC and US Territories Quarters Program, specifically the Guam Quarter Dollar Project. Tano y Mansamoro was prominently placed on the 25-cent piece. Language experts from this government encouraged me at that time to ensure that the words Guahan y Tano Mansamoro be placed on the design irregardless of what other art would have made the back of that quarter at that time. My question today is what has changed since that particular effort? Mansamoro hit, spelled with the O-R-R-O, in a recent language competition at the University of Guam, believe it or not, was acceptable. Part of the story, written in advance of the event, no docking of points for this particular school and their particular submission. In fact, there was kudos that were given by the judges for that reference from, again, the annual Chamorro language competition. Mr. Speaker, changing Chamorro to Chamorro, right, the O-R-R-O to the O-R-U, the C-H capitalized, on paper can only go so far and will only do so much to help perpetuate Chamorro as we know it today. It is why I believe strongly that encouraging the use of our native language requires us to want to learn the language, to learn from those who speak the language, and practice as often as we can, to listen to Chamorro music, if it helps, and to never give up, even when we are laughed at, and I've had my share of that, or struggle to complete our first sentence in our native language. To our colleague and author of Bill 218, Mrs. Masi, for all that you do to help strengthen awareness of the Chamorro identity. This measure reflects your continued commitment to celebrating the Chamorro language, culture, and traditions today, well beyond Mes Chamorro. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to speak on Bill 218.
On the bill. On the bill. Any other senators wishing to speak on the bill? Senator Parrish, you have an amendment. Would you like to speak? Gentlelady from Barragata, ma'am, you're recognized.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. So in looking at the bill, of course, I support embracing our, the language and changes to the language. But, looking at it closely, some of the testimony provided by the compiler herself, she stated she does not oppose the cultural intent of the bill, but raises technical, legal, and administrative objections, particularly regarding implementation. She says ambiguity and vagueness in legal language. So the language states specifically that the spelling of Chamorro, C-H-A-M-O-R-R-O, shall refer to the legacy spelling to be replaced except where used in historical or legally established context. And so she states that this is unclear and open to interpretation. It creates the risk of inconsistent or contradictory application across statutes and agencies. She says the bill effectively delegates significant interpretive authority to the compiler of laws and requires a case-by-case judgment on whether terms should be replaced, whether exceptions apply. And this introduces subjectivity into statutory revision. The bill applies to codified laws, but does not clearly address court decisions, other legal publications. It raises concern about incomplete or uneven implementation. And some terms, so it conflicts with existing legal texts. So some terms are proper nouns and historically established, and this will remain unchanged under exceptions producing internal inconsistency. She states there is a potential overreach of authority. The bill may extend beyond the compiler's statutory role by requiring alteration of language originally enacted by the legislature. It raises separation of roles, institutional authority concerns. There's a need for clarification of terminology of scope, notes that both Chamorro and Chamorro appear in existing law, recommends clarifying whether both should be replaced with Chamorro. And so this is a really, concern for me when we're changing the language. I mean, especially when we have a settlement agreement with the Chamorro Land Trust. And, one would think, oh, that won't change the settlement agreement. But, do we know that for a fact? The other thing is that the late Ron Rivera, who fought so hard for Chamorro self-determination, really fought hard to include Chamorro into the question of Guam in the United Nations. And so what the compiler may know may be limited in scope as well in regards to international law. And so I think it's really critical that, we move very carefully when we are mandating by law to replace any spelling from Chamorro to Chamorro, because there could be legal repercussions. I know the bill states that, but who is going to be the decider, and what if that decider is not aware of the unintended consequences? And so for this reason, I'm okay with moving forward, but going backward into time, that might affect it. And so in this particular bill, it authorizes the compiler to revise any government publication and to replace these terms. And so, again, the compiler states that it is potential overreach for her position. And, if we are going to change these texts, I think they should be done in the light rather than, behind a closed door, so to speak. So we have to be very aware of the impacts of what we're doing. And for me, that's why I am proffering this amendment, is to leave those sections out, section B and C of the bill. We can keep change of the language moving forward, but I'm concerned about any historical legal texts that have not even been addressed or fully vetted. And so I ask for my colleagues' support.
Why don't we do this? Because I think that there's a compromise that can be worked out between the author and the proffer of the amendment. Let's go ahead and allow the two of you to be able to talk to it, so you can see it comes something amicable. Okay, because the author of the amendment does bring up some very valid points and stuff, and I think you share the same concern. So let's take a lunch break and come back at 2 p.m. so we can go through that. Okay? So lunch break until 2 p.m. We're in recess.